Now for your best bets presented by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And the semis in the CFP will feature the 4 teams left standing. You got Penn State clash with Notre Dame as 2.5-point underdogs in the Orange Bowl, while Texas and Ohio State head to Arlington for the Cotton Bowl. Texas favored by 5.5 in that matchup. Favorites went 8-0 straight up, 7-1 against the spread through the first 2 rounds of these playoffs. Will it be another clean sweep for the favorites, or are any dogs barking? And here to help us break it all down, it's really just an all-star cast, right, of our college football analysts. We've got Josh Pate, we've got Danny Kanell, and joining us from home is Chip Patterson. Chip, why aren't you here?
I don't know if Chip was hearing us there right off the bat. He looked very casual, right, Katie?
All right, we'll start with you, Danny. Let's look to the Orange Bowl, where Notre Dame and Penn State meet for the first time since 2007. Notre Dame scored its biggest bowl win in decades with that 23-10 win over number 2 Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. But Riley Leonard's got his got it cut out for him in this one. Can you, when you consider what they did to Asher Denting?
Absolutely. He's got a big test for him. And either with or without Abdul Carter, this Penn State defense is incredible. I am assuming that Abdul Carter is going to play, right? I mean, that's every report out there. We were just looking with Ryan Stryker, one of our producers, at his social media accounts, trying to decipher what cryptic messages that he's sending. But it is the Final Four, right? It's you have to go and give it a try in this matchup. But even outside of that, I think Riley Leonard has been good. I don't think he's been great. I think Notre Dame's defense has been incredible. I think this clearly will be one of the biggest tests that they've had. And considering the way the last game unfolded with Georgia at the Sugar Bowl, that flurry of points right before half and coming out of halftime with the kickoff return, that to me was super impressive. But the rest of the game in its totality, I thought Notre Dame was really good defensively and they struggled offensively. I think it could play out similarly against Penn State. And I think Penn State's Drew Aller is playing with so much confidence. That to me is the difference in where he is as a quarterback. He's making big time throws. Tyler Warren's always been really good. The run game is working. I trust Drew Aller and Penn State's offense more in a lower scoring game. I like the under in this game too, but I do think Penn State will come out on the right side.
You know, you talked about how he's not maybe playing at a great level. Okay, so the box score is not going to tell you the whole story. Obviously, with Riley Leonard, I think he's playing perfect because a guy who's trying to do any more, a guy who's trying to force it within the construct of what Notre Dame football is right now, probably is more likely to turn a ball over and cost you a game. I mean, he had 90 yards passing against Georgia. If you and I were talking before that game, and I would have said, hey, DK, he's going to have 90 passing, you would have said, go Dogs, send him to the next round. As it turns out, 90 was good enough for a double-digit win. And the reason is because they really, truly play what the old heads used to call complementary football. It turns out it still works. The big question is, like, can you really just rely on getting turnovers, getting +1, +2 turnovers every week? They only have to do it 2 more times. So they're close.
All right, they are close. Chip, what say you?
I think that when you think about Riley Leonard within the context of this Notre Dame offense, we have to remember, like a lot of quarterbacks, he just showed up. You know, this is Mike Denbrock coming in and taking over. This is a new quarterback. And so it has been a little bit of a developmental process. It's been a little bit of a rocky road for the entire offense, starting up front where everybody was pointing to this group and thinking about how much trouble they were going to be in College Station against Texas A&M. And yet they have developed. They have gotten better, and they've been able to answer the call really at almost every turn except for that one game against Northern Illinois. So we had a spirited debate in terms of ranking the 4 quarterbacks in these college football playoff semifinals, and I find myself on the more bullish end of Riley Leonard because, just like Josh said, it is not always going to be the obvious statistical dominance that you would get from other quarterbacks, but many of the quarterbacks who had statistical dominance right now in college football, they aren't playing football anymore. Instead, it is quarterbacks like Riley Leonard and maybe even Drew Aller as well who've been able to get their team to the finish line by doing what they needed in each moment.
You know, you kind of already brought this up, Danny, when you brought up Abdul Carter, but how big of a loss is it if he doesn't play?
He's the best defensive edge pass rusher in the game, so it's a massive loss for what they want to do, and somebody that can chase down Riley Leonard because he is an incredibly elusive quarterback. He runs powerful, and from a mental aspect, I think that's something that people don't talk about enough, is when you lose somebody who is sort of the life force of your defense, what that does to the other players. Sometimes it makes everybody rise up to the occasion, makes them play harder. Sometimes you feel sorry for yourself, and it gives you an excuse. And if you start struggling, it's like, well, we don't have our guy. So that remains to be seen if he wasn't playing, how they would respond. But from a production standpoint, he is a massive difference maker.
Well, and that's going to be interesting when we look at the line for this game, right? Notre Dame laying 2.5. This total 44.5. Danny, you already said you kind of like
I gave mine too early. I was too excited.
The under in this game. We'll start with you, Pate.
I am actually taking Penn State.
Okay.
I am taking the working theory that you don't just continue to copy and paste being plus in the turnover margin. Now, this has gotten me in really hot water with Notre Dame folks. Like, if I don't get this one right, I'm pretty much cooked. I can't go up there again because I keep on thinking, it can't continue, and then it keeps continuing. So I'm going to roll the dice one more time that we just have like an evenly played game in the turnover margins. And if that's the case, man, Penn State's ready to grab, I would call, the biggest win of James Franklin's career here.
Without a doubt, it would be. So first of all, the good. Notre Dame has just been playing at a super high level. I love what they're able to do in terms of stealing possessions, managing a game. It is a group that Marcus Freeman has jumped up my own personal ballot when we do our coach rankings in May with the job that he's been able to do, the intangibles, refocusing the team after the loss, but also the way that he's been able to handle this team, do some of the game management stuff that I thought he has not done well in previous seasons. So I like Notre Dame. But there's a rake out there, and Penn State hasn't stepped on the rake yet. And so I just wonder if after not necessarily being awesome, but certainly being way better than SMU, and after maybe letting Boise State hang around a little too long, maybe that rake is there in the form of Notre Dame. So I've got Notre Dame. I will lay the 2.5.
All right, so we're split on the side. Danny locking in the under in this one. Let's move on to the Cotton Bowl. It'll feature two top defenses here in the nation with Ohio State and Texas. Texas, of course, most of the regular season was at the top of all of the defensive metrics, but they got a little bit leaky in their pass defense in the playoffs. Does that worry you at all, Pate?
I'm worried on a multitude of fronts about Texas, and the reason is because there's so little margin for error here. So you talked about the pass defense. Yes, obviously, if Will Howard, I think it's a non-negotiable that if Will Howard goes off again, it's fundamental. It really doesn't matter what happens on the other side. But then the other part of that is, can you disrupt the timing and rhythm and flow of this offense? It doesn't always show up in sack totals, tackles for loss. It's just, there was no disruption from Oregon against Ohio State. Texas does roster for roster have the big bodies and have the multiplicity up front defensively, athletically to do that. But that's a bunch of if. Like, if you can't do that, to me, that's a non-negotiable. I am concerned about it. But also, on the flip side, Chip just talked about the rake. I'm certainly not painting Ohio State as rake prone here, but no one's even made them play a second half in the postseason yet. So if you could just do that, pull them out into the deep end a little bit, then it becomes a roster game, and they've recruited the way they have at Texas for a while for a reason.
I can't wait for this game. This game's going to be awesome. Katie, you mentioned Texas' defense getting a little bit leaky after being ranked so strong. It's interesting what happens when you start playing actually good teams, because that was something I was bringing up. We had this debate about Texas not really playing anybody. How come nobody was bringing up their strength of schedule? And they've been good enough to win, but that's about it. Like, they have barely dodged a disaster against Arizona State. But that defense is where I think they have their best chance of keeping it in this game. They do have Jahdae Barron, who was the Thorpe Award for the best defensive back in the country. They've got Michael Taft, who ironically might not have been playing in this first half if that targeting call had been called, and he would have had to sit out the first half. He didn't, so he's playing. They have to have a plan to slow down, at least slow down and not give up so many big plays, but that is a risky proposition to have out there. I will say this, I also think Texas's offensive line needs to step up to the challenge. They've been talked about and raved about all season long, and they've been good. This is a game that you'll have to match physicality, and you have to disrupt what they're doing as well and keep them off the field. That is one way to defend that explosive offense, is to try to extend drives, something they've done at times, but they've been so herky-jerky. Like, they hop out to the early lead against Arizona State, can't close. They kind of go into this funk in the middle portion of the game. They're going to have to keep the ball and try to establish that ground game and the dominance on the interior and on both sides of the line of scrimmage.
I think that Texas would like to shorten this game. I think they'd like to get to the fourth quarter. I think they'd like to make this a one-possession game. I think there are numbers that Ohio State's offense can put on the board that Texas's offense would struggle to be able to keep up, trade paint with. In all the different outcomes that I can envision here, a close Texas win, possible. A close Ohio State win, possible. But I don't see Texas blowing out Ohio State, and I could see things get sideways in a way where the Buckeyes are able to run away with this. The offensive line point is fantastic. Both of these teams have dealt with injuries along the offensive line all through the season. And while they've had some time to try to get a little bit better or get used to their new starting five that's out there, we are one tweak, we are one roll up from having to dip even deeper into the depth chart in both of these fronts. And that is the other side of these stellar defenses for both Texas and Ohio State. So game within the game here. I don't think Texas wants to have this be a shootout because Ohio State's top gear offensively, in my opinion, is a little bit higher. And number two, can both of these offensive lines get through the game healthy? Because if all of a sudden you start to see, Cameron Williams go down, if all of a sudden Kelvin Banks retweaks something, if Ohio State has to go even deeper on its depth chart, things could become very problematic given the size, skill, and experience on the other side of those offensive lines. So it is an awesome, awesome game that will be decided at the margins.
All right, fellas, let's bet on it, right? Should we wager on this one? Ohio State favored -5.5, total 53.5. Chip, we'll start with you.
Oh, yeah, that means I get to talk about the best bet in America. But first, the basics. We'll start with Ohio State. We'll lay those points. I talked about the different kinds of outcomes that we've got. I don't hate a ladder play here. If you were to run this thing up to 13.5 and really start to envision a Buckeyes victory. But the best third quarter team in America is taking the field. And we've got an opportunity to get Ohio State once again third quarter -1.5. Texas also conversely not a great third quarter team. And so if I can go back to the well because the well has water, then baby, we gonna drink Ohio State in the third quarter, and I'll take them for the full game too.
Hey, look, he's right, okay? I'm not even going to overthink the room. I'm just laying the points. It's a max bet for me with Ohio State. What concerns me, contrary to here. Look, I know what you're going to do. You're going to step on the rake. You are the one stepping on the rake. Here's the thing. They outrushed Clemson badly in the first game. They had like 290 on the ground. And as a result, they achieved balance. They won the game. Arizona State outrushed them by like 150 yards. Arizona State, as a result, was able to get immense pressure on Texas's passing game. Arizona State wasn't even good at that in the regular season. 3 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. Ohio State is good at that. I do not think Texas can run the ball effectively. I think as a result, it's really going to throw that offense in a blender. And like Chip just said, there's a number Ohio State's probably going to put up here. I just flat out don't think Texas can keep up and match it. I'll lay the points.
If that happens, you realize what that means. The SEC would be sitting at home.
Shame on them.
Watching the championship
Shame
game,
on them.
Which that would be hard to watch. I think we're forgetting something, right? And this makes complete sense. Both of your guys' picks make complete sense.
So follow.
We do have a common opponent.
Yeah.
That is the Michigan Wolverines, which we did see Texas go to Ann Arbor and dominate that game. And we saw the Michigan Wolverines go to the Shoe and pretty much push around Ohio State.
Yep.
This roster is talented enough to go toe-to-toe. I could be stepping in front of a locomotive with a blindfold on and could get absolutely steamrolled. But I still think 5.5 points is too much value on a team that has one of the best rosters in the country. Give me Texas in those.
What does your dog think? What does your dog think? That's what I want to know.
Bowden's on the Longhorns. Let's go. He's been on fire, too.
He has been on fire. That's what I wanted to know. That's what I wanted to know. All right, time now for our Parlay Pick presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. Chip, hit us with your parlay.
All right, we're going to start with a little bit of threading the needle in the first game, the Orange Bowl. We're going to go Penn State in the first half plus 1.5 points. That means 14-13, 10-9, 7-6. All those would still get home. Obviously, Penn State leading or tied would be a big check mark right there. But then I do think Notre Dame wins the game. I don't want to sweat the 2.5. So that is our little thread the needle. Penn State first half, Notre Dame for the full game. And then you cap it off with, again, one of the best bets of the entire college football season, Ohio State in the third quarter. You tie all these up, that treasure map pays out at plus 957.
I gotta get. What do y'all think?
It's never that easy. I love the confidence they have in Ohio State. Maybe they're right. Again, I might get run over, but it's never that easy.
I know, almost 10-1, Pate.
For them.
Well, you can talk all you want to about how uneasy it is. I just wrote it down. So when I go upstairs, I will.
Placing it.
Chip,
I will.
Let's go. All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you all. Chip Patterson, Josh Pate, and Danny Kanell there. And just a reminder. This is presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make every moment more. Football fans, buckle up, because for the first time ever, FanDuel is giving all customers a no-sweat same-game parlay for 5 straight days of the college football playoffs. Plus, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed on your first $5 bet.